We have Renée, who I think needs no introduction here. So Renée, as you all know, is manager with the IUCN Peatland Code and has been there for nearly 6 years and has a background in various studies around peatlands and peatland restoration. And she's going to talk to us about the Peatland Code, how that works, what it's achieved, where it's going, I guess, into the future, and so also how people can engage with it.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Matt. So yeah, I'm Renée Kerkvliet-Hermans. I work for the IUCN UK Peatland Programme where I manage the Peatland Code. So I am just going to give you a very, very basic, quick tour about what the Peatland Code actually is. Please come and talk to me afterwards if you want to know more, or look at our website. There's loads of training videos and other stuff there that goes into more detail. I'm not doing that today. So very basic, what is the Peatland Code? So the Peatland Code is a UK government-backed carbon standard for UK peatlands. So it's a domestic standard, UK only, with UK data behind it, so really specific. It's really there to underpin market trust. So we issue carbon credits for peatland restoration or re-wetting, and then we quantify how many emission reductions you get throughout the lifetime of your project, and you can sell those carbon credits to companies to offset their emissions. So those companies can then become carbon neutral or net zero if they buy those credits and use them as offsets. And the Peatland Code really is there so we can actually have a market. So we are underpinning the market trust because we can issue credits, but if we have no trust in the credits, then we don't have any buyers. And we don't get actually any private finance flowing into this restoration. What we're also working on is voluntary biodiversity credits, or voluntary biodiversity uplift. So Rochelle is somewhere around, not in the room right now, but she's leading on our biodiversity work. So it's about quantifying the biodiversity uplift that your peatland restoration also has. We're looking at using Operation Wallacea, so using a basket of metrics that you actually measure your uplift. It's about voluntary, so it's nothing to do with BNG in England, because that's a compulsory market. So, and we're looking at like a bundled carbon credit, so carbon plus a quantified biodiversity uplift there. We're also looking at just a voluntary biodiversity credit. So for projects that are not eligible for carbon or don't want to do carbon, they could also use just a voluntary biodiversity credit. So for example, in like where your peatland is too shallow or forcible, where we don't have the scientific evidence yet, it could be a way to get private finance into your project as well. Just to highlight, we've got how the Peatland Code, we've got a small team. So at the moment, we're a team of 4, thanks, with 1 person on maternity leave. So hopefully we're soon a team of 5 again working on this. So small team. But we've got an executive board, a really good technical advisory board that really, from all sorts of people like policy, but also scientists, obviously, that help. And then we've got a market and investment forum with everyone that has kind of an economic interest into this, that also then feeds into, through those mechanisms into this. So one thing I hear a lot is the Peatland Code is really complicated. And I understand that. I get it. For me, I live and breathe this. But if you just come across it, it is quite a few steps. It is not the easiest thing to do. And that's all got to do with the high integrity piece. Like, we have to kind of balance that rigor with the usability. We have to make it really scientifically robust. We need to make sure that we follow the international standards that are out there to make sure that our carbon credits are actually going to have those buyers, because they are looking for all these labels. So there are a lot of acronyms on that. I apologize for that. But one of the really big things is that in the carbon markets, you need to have ISO accreditation of your validation and verification bodies. So those are the bodies that do the independent third-party checks of our projects throughout the lifetime of those projects. Now, ISO standards specifically, like there's loads of ISO standards, but there's a few specific for carbon markets that they have to adhere to. Us, as a standard, then also need to make sure that what we actually dictate is ISO compliant. So if we as a standard say you need to do X, Y, Z, and that's nothing to do with the ISO standards, then obviously our validation bodies cannot get ISO accreditation. So I do have this because we are very, very proud of this. And Garance, my colleague, is sitting at the front. This has been 4 years in the making, blood, sweat, and tears over the last 3 years for Garance. So this is UK Accreditation Services who have checked the Peatland Code, and if we are ISO compliant. And finally, version 1.2 was signed off years ago, version 2 and 2.1. We've had a real fight with them, but we finally got there. So I think that deserves a round of applause for Garance. Yeah, that's been really dedication and a lot of emails. But the other thing is, like in the UK, we've got the British Standards Institute, so they're also setting up national standards for carbon, biodiversity, other markets, community interest as well. Community engagement as well. And we've been part of their pilot phase, so of the first FLEX 701 standard. And you can see in the green boxes that they deem the Peatland Code as like really well aligned with these high standards that they're setting, and there's some strong alignments there, which is really, really good and helpful, obviously, but that's again where the buyers are looking for. And then the last acronym there is IUCN. So that's Integrity Council for the Voluntary Carbon Market. So that's an international standard. So all the big standards like Verra, Gold Standard, they're all going through that. And our application is hopefully going in next week, the second round of that. So keeping our fingers crossed that we get through that. But that will be quite a long process before we get through that. So very quickly, project timeline. So if you are restoring your peatland, you need to register with us before you do anything on site. So that's a really important one. Do that before, because if you do it after, you're not eligible anymore. Then you need to fill in your paperwork, get all your project design, your mapping, your baselining, all of that done. In the fence, you also need to do a baseline water table. And then that gets independently checked. So one of those independent validators, third-party independent, then looks at your project timeline, project documents, and says, yes, that's okay, or no, do something else. And then you get your project plan validation. You can start your restoration works whilst that's on the way, and then within 1 year of finishing restoration, you need to go through another check to show that you actually did what you said you were going to do in your plan. So that's restoration validation. So those are the two initial checks that are done independently of your project. Then throughout your project, at year 5, and as a minimum every 10 years, the independent verifier goes on site to check that your site is in a better condition than we expected it to be at the start. So they look at what your condition, what kind of condition it is in, if it's better than it was as a baseline, and if so, we can release those pending issuance units into peatland carbon units. So there's like verified units. You can only make an offset claim on the verified units, but you can, so initially we set up all units that we expect you're going to deliver. So they are like pending issuance units. We set them up at the start. You can sell them at the start if you want to. There's obviously a risk because you haven't delivered it yet. But that's a bit complicated and we don't have time to go completely into that. But there's a way to get in finance at the start of your project or throughout your lifetime of your project. That's completely up to the landowner, how they get that finance in. Just very briefly, number of projects. So we currently have 410 projects. When just under 60,000 hectares of peatland restoration is registered on the Peatland Code. As you can see, most of them are in Scotland. That's got mainly to do with how the public funding works in Scotland, because we allow for blending of public finance with this private finance. So you can bring in public finance, and then you need to show that you do need the private finance to make your project happen, but it does mean you can get in a grant as well. You don't have to fully rely on the carbon credit sales. So that takes some of that risk away for the landowner. In Scotland, the way Peatland Action works, we've done a lot of work with Peatland Action in Scotland about aligning the process of the Peatland Code and Peatland Action. and that's working really, really well. I would love that we can work the same in Wales, in Northern Ireland, and in England. The finance, the public finance, public grants all work slightly different, as you can imagine, in all 4 countries. But we are working hard on trying to get that alignment in place in the other countries as well. And that was all I was going to talk about. I know I've thrown a lot out of you, but yeah, please come and find us, me or one of the team, if you want to ask any further questions. But yeah, thank you very much.